To go nuclear or not? That's the question facing voters at the next election. And today, opposition leader Peter Dutton finally delivered his nuclear energy vision. And importantly, how much he reckons it's going to cost us.
We just can't pretend anymore that part-time power is going to run a full-time economy.
Nuclear energy back on the agenda.
This will make electricity reliable, it'll make it more consistent, it'll make it cheaper.
It's a hip pocket pitch to voters from the opposition.
A 44% reduction in the cost of energy for Australian consumers.
But with an expected price tag of $331 billion over 25 years.
$263 billion less than what would otherwise have to be paid under Labor's plan.
That Labor plan? To get to 82% renewables by 2030. Expected to cost $600 billion. In contrast, the Coalition wants nuclear to power almost 40% of our electricity needs by 2050, with renewables at just over 50%. But critics today were lining up to pull the plug on the opposition's numbers.
Happy Friday the 13th, and an auspicious day, I've got to say, for Dutton to drop his nuclear nightmare policy out there.
The economics come out of an economic model. I don't believe them.
These costings are riddled with fundamental errors, with heroic assumptions and with cons.
We continue down the path of Labor's renewables-only approach. We will become poorer, weaker and more dependent as a nation.
Experts claim the modelling has deep flaws because it assumes our electricity use will be 31% less than the amount Labor's planning for.
This is a fatal error in their costings, and it is a dangerous error.
It will lower costs, it will keep the lights on, and it will set our country up for generations to come.
As to what the whole thing means for our current power bill pain?
By putting in place zero emissions nuclear power, we can reduce the cost of storage, of transmission, of capacity. That can reduce the cost of energy bills to Australians.
After months of talking about what nuclear would mean for energy bills, they couldn't even put a price on the impact of their plan on the average bills of Australians.
So, with an election just months away, will nuclear energy power Peter Dutton into the lodge? Well, Director of the Energy Futures Network at the University of Wollongong, Professor Ty Christopher, is here to help us unpack all of that. Ty, what are your thoughts on these numbers from the Coalition?
Well, for a start, this is really turning into spreadsheets at 20 paces in terms of whose numbers are right, and all of these numbers are projections into the future. What I would say is the gen cost figures, the ones being relied on by the government, they're also relied on by myself. They represent 7 years of work from the premier scientific body in the country. The numbers that have come out today, they're just one report that's come out today. So I think I know where I would put my faith, and that's with our scientists, our economists and our engineers from the CSIRO.
Yeah, so the Coalition has been saying it'll have the first nuclear plant up and running by the late 2030s. Now, like you say, everything I've been hearing about this, experts are saying this is just not possible. So is there something Peter Dutton knows that we don't?
Well, he must have the secret sauce, because the International Atomic Energy Agency says that it'll take 15 years to go from zero to commissioning your first nuclear reactor as a nation. And at the moment, the Coalition are saying that we can do that in about 12 years from now, out to 2037. But the real question is, even if we believed all of that, even if we were able to commission 2 nuclear reactors by 2037, they'd still only deliver 1/3 of the generation capacity we need due to the retirement of coal-fired power stations by 2035. So they'll deliver 1/3 of what we need 2 years too late.
So why is he putting all his eggs in this radioactive basket?
Well, I think it's a smart political play that we're seeing go out here. It's a point of differentiation. The real agenda is in the byline, and that is, in order for all of this to work, we're going to have to keep our coal-fired power stations burning for decades longer than they would have otherwise. And I think that byline in this is where we start to see some of the real agendas coming to the fore. Going down a nuclear-only mindset and a nuclear pathway is a recipe for us to burn coal for decades longer than we would have to if we continue our journey with renewables.
Professor, besides Springfield, is there any world in which nuclear could work?
Good question, Susie.
Well, nuclear does work, and it works across the globe. And I should say up front, I'm not anti-nuclear. I'm just pro-fact in what's going on in terms of the discussion here. And so what we really should say is there may be a role for nuclear to play in the last 10 or 15% of decarbonisation of our grid. But the real question that we should be asking ourselves is, if nuclear is so good, if nuclear is so wonderful, then why do we as taxpayers have to be paying for it? Why should we have to take money from hospitals, schools and roads to pay for nuclear when the 43 gigawatts of renewables that are currently in the pipeline here in Australia are funded by private capital, superannuation, big banks and the like? We should let the market decide what the best technologies are here and let that give us the cheapest energy into the future.
Well, Ty, thank you very much for your time and your insight.
Thank you very much for having me.